Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's Friday night, so it's the one time you can be as judgmental as you like, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to find out who is going to win this week's Plank of the Week, because there's been an awful lot of it, plankery I mean, and I'm delighted to say that we are joined by a very estimable panel this week. All senior reporters, journalists, pundits of all kinds, it has to be said. Laura Dodsworth is here, author and journalist. Alan Miller, the founder of Together. Daisy McAndrew, TalkTV's very own. And of course, Ben Habib, who is a member and of course a founder and advisor of Reform UK. This is what we're playing for, the plank itself. Thank you very much indeed. And let's kick things off straight away. Laura Dodsworth, who have you got for us?
I think I've got the winner of tonight's
Do you?
show.
You always say that.
I'm just going to start bold. I would like to nominate Adjoa Andoa because she was a pundit on ITV during King Charles III's Coronation.
Yes.
And she described the balcony at Buckingham Palace as terribly white.
Yes.
Now, when somebody says terribly white, you don't have to be a linguistic genius to work out what they mean is too white.
Yes. It's not a compliment, is it?
It's not a compliment. And I think a lot of people perceived it to be quite racist. And over 4,000 people have complained to Ofcom. It's the most complained about TV incident of the year.
Right. Amazing. Let's have a look at it.
There is a bit of me that we've gone from the rich diversity of the Abbey to a terribly white balcony. I'm very struck by that.
Very struck by that.
Oh,
also, the Abbey wasn't that diverse. I mean, there were different people in there from all over the world, so that was diverse. But I mean, all the people involved, it seems to me, most of the people involved in the actual coronation were white. You know, King Charles was white, Camilla was white, the Archbishop of Canterbury was white. I mean, you know.
You sound like Yusuf Hamza, or Hamza Yusuf.
Yeah, you do. But, you know, it's a ludicrous suggestion. A family can't just suddenly rustle up the correct proportion of ethnic minority members. She was looking at a balcony of people, a family.
Right.
And I think, to be honest, she's got a bit confused between the Buckingham Palace balcony and Bridgerton.
Yes.
You know, she plays an 1800s ladies in Bridgerton.
There's a lot of people in Bridgerton who are not white.
Well, exactly. And of course, you know, you can have colourblind or colour-conscious casting. And I think to make a serious point, actually, in a way, what people are seeing on TV is almost confusing them about what real life looks like. And of course, there should be no onus on a family to change how it looks.
But also, what do they want people to do? Do they want people to actually, you know, invent somebody to put on the balcony who happens to be not white? Because that would be more ridiculous, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it might have been a pointed comment that Meghan Markle wasn't on the balcony.
It might have been.
It could have been. It could have been code for that.
She should have said, "Well, you know, shame Meghan's not there."
Isn't it a shame Meghan's not here?
She actually made. You know, people say the United Kingdom's not a racist country, but I beg to differ. It is racist. It's racist against white people now.
Yeah.
You know, the complaint is that we're institutionally racist against ethnic minorities. It's completely the other way around, and that was clear evidence of it.
Well, imagine somebody said, I think, that she's got one parent who's black and one parent who's white. I think one of them's from Gambia, and somebody posted a picture of the Gambian sort of ruling family, and they're all black. You know, I don't think anybody in their right mind would go, that's a terribly black picture, would they? They're from Gambia. What do you expect? You know?
But do you think that perhaps people got their knickers in a bit of a twist too much about the fact that she used this word terribly? Because when you see the clip, the way she says it isn't a very sort of antagonistic or negative way. It was almost sort of more in sorrow.
I think she
than
means
in
very.
anger.
She might be. She means very.
And I think people have latched onto this word terribly and said, "Oh, she thinks it's terrible," and I think that's a little unfair.
Well, that might be true, but the accentuation of our immutable features is the definition of racism, actually, and the idea of these inherent traits that we can't transcend, or that is what defines us, rather than our character and who we are. And in that context, I think we're in dangerous ground, because the projection of this idea of the whether it means very or terribly, of just whiteness in and of itself being a problem, is the inversion of the older idea of racism as well. And I just think that all of that's a problem, and we should look at people's character and behaviour.
Britain is still a majority white country. 83% of the population is white.
Well,
whether it seems like that in every single part of Britain is not the point. You know, but the point is, overall, that's what it is.
4% of the country is black. And according to the Creative Diversity Network report, 8% of contributions on TV are from black people. So there is good representation of black people on TV. But the interesting thing is, I think that actually, in a way, diversity goes so far. You know, think about TV ads where you see a lot of racial mixing, which is, you know, it's a good thing. But that means that actually 20%, the majority of Britain thinks that 20% of the country is black, according to a YouGov poll. So actually, you know, people do this thing where they really overestimate numbers.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends where you live, doesn't it? I mean, if you live in Birmingham or London or Leeds, possibly Manchester, you might think there's a bigger ethnic diversity of the country than there actually is, because you go to other parts and there isn't.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing no one wants to talk about anymore.
And who cares, by the way?
Yeah, that's the point. Who cares?
Cares? I don't care.
I'm offended by her statement, even if you put a line through the word terribly, because, you know, what's the relevance of identifying the colour of the people on the balcony?
What she, I mean, I'm not quite sure why I'm defending her, because I did.
You are wearing a white jacket.
I am wearing a white jacket, so I'm probably part of the problem. But I think what she was saying is that the Abbey was very lovely. It was very lovely to see the diversity, to see the fact that what has been not just a very white ceremony, but a completely Church of England ceremony, had gone, you know, the King and Archbishop Canterbury had gone out of their way to welcome particularly other religious faiths in and make a big deal of that, so that people could feel a bit more connected. And I think that was definitely a positive, and that was the most significant.
But it also tells you as well that no matter how many kind of, you know, concessions that are made by the established sort of Church of England, it's still not enough for some people, like this woman, Joando. You know, she wants more. She doesn't think it's enough. She wants a more diverse balcony. What's wrong with it?
Every concession we make, every concession that's made, is basically feeding the beast. The notion that by making concessions, you end up in some kind of harmonious equilibrium, it just doesn't hold true.
And you tick another box. Anyway, that's enough.
I mean, it must be said.
It was a crass foot in the mouth.
It was.
Comment.
I think she could only have been trying to sort of ingratiate herself with the wokists, and it all backfired. So
it was racist, and the fact is, you know, whatever we're saying here right now, it's the most complained about TV incident of the year. You know, you look at the reaction of people she was sitting with, Myleene Clark opposite her, like,
she
really
horrified.
She's really struggling to control her face. I'd be shocked if somebody said that to me, because you don't really have the right to comment on the colour of her family.
Not really.
It's a really
They're
odd,
Germans
jarring
anyway.
comment. You could
Alan,
say they're very Hanoverian.
they are
They're
very Hanoverian looking. A bit too much Hanoverian going on. Alan, who have you got for us?
Yes, so my plank of the week is for this government for implementing legislation that got royal decree on May the 2nd to extend and implement more measures in the public order bill that's now become the Act, which was used quite egregiously to arrest a number of people that were going to protest that had arranged it in advance with the Met Police at the Coronation.
These Republican tossers, as I call them.
And that's the thing, Mike, isn't it? It's regardless of what we think about anyone, but the legacy of freedom in Britain and standing on the shoulders of all those who fought and died for it has meant that it's very important, and we have the ability to allow people to protest freely. I know democratically, I know a lot of people are concerned, quite understandably, with some of the other measures that have happened. But I think this is the problem, that when the Police Crime and Sentencing Act was put forward and they had some of these measures like tagging people and banning them, like suspension orders from protest around a whole range of very broad themes. We only have to look back at lockdown or on the questions of ULEZ or other issues, that if we have other types of protests, when people start using this, is it going to be some kind of nuisance, or do I think you're potentially going to do something? Now, the Met have come out and said, we're sorry we arrested you because we were actually wrong.
Well, the Met have been a bit schizophrenic on it, though, haven't they? Because the Met, first of all, arrested them, and nobody knows what the arrangement was for a start. So, and I don't trust Graham Smith as far as I can throw him, to be honest. You know, I'd throw him back in his cell today if I could, just for looking the way he does. But the point is, in the end, the police say that they arrested them because they thought that they were about to throw paint. They thought that they might have things that were going to frighten the horses. You know, I think they made a mistake by saying that they regretted arresting them, and I think that was the sort of the schizophrenic Sadiq Khan side of the Met saying that, because it was Sir Mark Rowley who came out after that and said actually there was a good reason for arresting them. And I don't object to whatever they want to protest against, but they were able to protest. They all protested in Pall Mall and they all protested in Trafalgar Square. So I'm not one of those, and I know there are many, who think it's a mistake. Because it's not a clampdown on freedom of speech. It's a clampdown on disruption of an event.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Because what they said was, the police, that because they had straps and Republic was saying, we've organised this, you know we're coming, but these straps to hold their placards, that they could be used to lock on.
Yeah.
And of course,
Which
we could
is true.
say all sorts of things. It could be shoelaces or anything, because people will become more innovative. If we remember the war on terror and some of those things at airports, when one person does something and a new thing, then all of a sudden we're all taking our shoes off all the time. And in other measures, not to trivialise this, where one can say, well, you could really potentially do all sorts of things. Does that then mean we're living in a moment where you're going somewhere to peacefully, democratically protest, and then you get arrested in advance? I'm very concerned with these measures. The government had the measures. This is the important thing. The police have had the laws to stop the protests that are disrupting and damaging property and vehicles already. They didn't need to pass these additional ones. And the public would have been very behind strong, stringent implementation of the laws on that basis, and they never did it. So we've got weak authoritarians making ever-increasing legislation, and for that reason, I think we've got to have the plan.
But the vast majority of people, certainly that have spoken to me on the shows and who have been on social media, think that the police were right to take them out of the game, to say, you know, we can't afford for this to go wrong. We can't afford to make a mistake. And if they had allowed something bad to happen, the police would have been even more heavily criticised. And I think because it's a one-off, I'm OK with it.
Yeah, I think the fact it's a one-off is really, really important. But it's so fascinating because from the no, but as in the coronation is a one-off. The coronation is a once-in-a-lifetime event with 100 heads of state who all have to be made safe and secure. I mean, we're led to believe that the security cost of the coronation is going to be about 150 million. As in the whole, they're now saying that the whole cost is 250, and only about 100 of that is the coronation. The rest is the security. So when you think about it in those terms, a handful of arrests is sort of small fry compared to the rest of what was going on behind the scenes. But if it, as I'm saying, if it is a slippery slope and just used as an opportunity to give the police ever more increasing power, then we've got a problem.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Alan's nominated the Public Order Act rather than those 6 arrests which the police have apologised for because they made a mistake.
Well, some of the police have apologised for them, but Rowley, the chief of the Met, hasn't. He's kind of reverse ferreted again and said, no, we needed to arrest these people.
But the Act itself, it's knee-jerk law, and knee-jerk law is not good law. It's bad law. It's very open to interpretation. It is potentially a slippery slope. It's definitely one to watch. And the kind of thing that happened at the coronation, whether you agree with it or not, and it's hugely divisive because it's the coronation, whether you agree with it or not, on that day, we should have been upholding our other British traditions of democracy, liberty, free speech, protest. Yeah.
There was loads of people shouting, "Not my king." I mean, you could barely move for them.
It is potentially a slippery slope because they were able to make arrests on the basis that there might be a lock-on device without suspicion.
But you're actually nominating a plank for something that might happen. So, we're all in the same boat.
And the other thing about doing something on the basis of a one-off or something that people feel highly emotive about, and they say, well, on this one occasion, we've seen all sorts of measures about limiting not just what we say, but how we protest and where we go and what we do. We're increasingly seeing that across the board in society. It's becoming culturally acceptable.
I disagree. I think all of the things that happened during COVID have all disappeared now.
Oh,
right?
You do?
Yeah.
So the discussion around surveillance cameras everywhere and 15-minute cities and low traffic neighbourhoods,
we've had all that.
Digital IDs.
We've had CCTV for about 25 years in this country. Most of the time it doesn't work.
OK, but the idea of monitoring people's movement and finding and restricting them and saying we're not going to discuss that with you, we're just going to impose it for your own good.
It won't happen because
it's
people
already
won't
happening with road closures already.
People won't accept it. You can shut a road by just digging it up.
But one of the delicious ironies about the day of the coronation is people didn't really know who Republic were, what they stood for, who Graham Smith was.
No.
Those 6 arrests have given... I mean, they must be thanking their lucky stars that they got.
Yeah.
Those 6 arrests were priceless publicity.
And still
for
people
them.
want to keep the royal family. Anyway, over to you, Daisy. What's your nomination?
So we're going north of the border for me, and I have to apologise to the friend on my right because this is about beards. But actually, this is me defending beards.
Well, that's all right then.
The Scottish police have announced that their members can't keep their beards from now on, which seems, when we have a policing crisis, when we need tens of thousands more policemen and policewomen to make the country
safe. It's
safe.
not just the women that have to shave the beards off.
Well, exactly.
It is Scotland.
But they're very keen on their qualities. The women can keep them. It's just
the women are fine, They're OK with that. It's true.
It's just the men that have got to get rid of the facial hair.
Tomorrow.
And it just seems, I bet Laura's got an opinion on this. Apparently this is so that they can, if they have to wear PPE, they can have masks that the beard doesn't get in the way. What? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's mad, isn't
blank
it?
looks all round.
It's so that they can wear FFP3 masks,
What
which
are
are
they?
very
Are those the tight ones?
they're really tight-fitting masks. They're the ones that actually might do something to prevent the transmission of
Oh, yeah.
viruses.
Right.
But the thing is, you're saying COVID's over. Well, yes, COVID's over. And if we're now down to a level where we're treating it like flu, like an annual coronavirus, what did they do before? I think police officers were allowed to have beards
Yeah.
and didn't have to wear masks on the front
And
line.
also,
So why bring it in now?
Police officers, the nature of their job is risk to their personal safety. It's the biggest risk. The fact that the beard might make the mask a tiny bit
I mean, maybe they might be more frightened of the guy with the knife standing in front
or
of
the
them.
gun,
about to
exactly,
stab
or the
them.
terrorist,
But
or
I mean,
whatever.
don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that that there are not maniacs who would still like to impose things upon us. There are plenty of them, and most of them in the public sector, and they would love to keep imposing restrictions on us. What I'm saying is, I think the public are actually fed up with it, and the public, by and large, will not put up with it. But let's have a look at a clip from America, because they tried banning beards apparently in Indiana, and they did this.
The Vincennes Police Department says it's trying out a new look, and it's a look you'll definitely notice.
For the next few weeks, the boys in blue will rock some rad facial hair.
Chief Dusty Luking picked one out for himself and says the officers are buzzing about it.
I had some of the rank and file officers come to me and had requested that we take a look at, possibly allowing some facial hair.
Police say if the trial run goes accordingly, the policy will be implemented. If not, officers will go back to the traditional clean-shaven rule.
Don't let anybody ever tell you American media is great, because that isn't. I mean, the local stuff is really
That's
bad.
the pinnacle.
Yeah, what was that guy's name? The green-shirted bloke? I mean, ridiculous, really, isn't it?
Mr. Goatee.
Mr. Goatee.
with all the issues.
Goatee.
So we're going
Yeah.
to have some rad facial hair
Rad.
in Scotland.
I
then,
mean,
as
I
they-
think
as
whatever
they,
you describe that guy as, it's not rad, right?
But you can see how this is going to lead to absolutely bizarre facial
What about-
hair
I'm-
fashions
yeah,
for the police.
what about
teeny
Sikh
tiny little
officers?
close-shaven? No, there will be religious exemptions.
so
there
the
are
Sikhs can?
maybe.
Oh, my goodness.
So there you
Really?
go.
I mean, either you have a rule for
Yeah,
all or
exactly.
you have a rule for none.
I know.
I think Hamza Yusuf should set the tone by shaving off his beard. don't
Yeah,
you
it's a
think?
good idea, absolutely. And put a mask on so we can't even
Put a
say.
mask on.
Right, Ben, down to you.
Well, mine's altogether much light-hearted than any of yours. So, on the 6th of May, on the day of the coronation, a 69-year-old gentleman in Derbyshire was arrested for driving without a licence,
Yeah.
and he hadn't had one for 50 years.
Brilliant.
I was hard pressed to determine who in this particular story was the plank,
Yeah.
Derbyshire
Right.
Road Police or the individual concerned. But in the end, I decided it was the guy. I can't name him because
Right.
they haven't handed his name out, but I decided it must be him. Because the reason he was caught, having had an exemplary record on the road over this 50-year period, not having passed a test, not having been insured legally, was the reason he was arrested was because he went on social media and bragged about it.
That's pretty impressive, though, to
That
have a
is quite
social media
impressive.
account at that age, isn't it?
Yeah, can you imagine, though, to have gone 50 years
Yeah.
without a road incident? We all get done for this,
Yeah,
that, and the
yeah.
other. And you have a prang and you've got to report, into your insurers. And this chap is obviously an exemplary member of the public
Yeah.
in all respects, except that he's got a bit of an ego.
So
about
has he
the
now
fact
been banned from driving?
He is now, I think he's got some pretty serious charges against him because, driving without insurance, driving without a licence, and so on and so forth.
Unbelievable.
Do you
It
not
also
feel
goes
like
to
a
show
tiny
it-
bit of respect?
Well, it
though?
also goes to
just a tiny bit.
Well, it also goes to show
It shows you
where
the
where the
surveillance
policing
police state
is actually
isn't really that
being
good.
conducted. It's being conducted on the social media, as we've seen
Yes,
already.
there you
So-
go. That's where they're looking
As to
for.
your point,
That's where they're looking
Alan,
for the villains.
Exactly.
Oh, we found one. Listen, we've got something for you, which is rather good. This is one of Britain's oldest drivers, Dorothy Proctor, who's still driving at the age of 96. Check this out.
Bloody hell. I'm only 4 feet 8, and sometimes I can't see over the steering wheel. I've got to be near to the steering wheel because I can't reach the pedals. My legs aren't very long, are they? I've got some blue tack on the 30 because I found it very difficult to keep to the speed limit.
I mean, makes you proud to be British.
Why would the blue tack on the 30 make her
so that she can
drive better?
see, I suppose, where it actually is. She probably can't see very well. My mother was still driving until she was about 93 or something like that, and she couldn't see a thing. And luckily she was only driving around Connecticut, which is quite quiet where she was, but she somehow managed to reverse the car at high speed into a supermarket, knocking over a flagpole, which was almost a criminal offence in America. And the police turned up and just said, "Show us your licence," just took it off her and just walked off with it. She's never driven since. But I mean, you do worry sometimes when you see people driving and you think, I've no idea if you know where you're going, never mind whether I can guess where you're going.
I'm a bit obsessed with drivers at the moment because my 17-year-old daughter had her first driving lesson yesterday.
God.
And she's not much, I hope she's not watching, she's not much taller than Dorothy. She's very
And they all
bitty.
think they can drive like you drive on sort of, those games, don't they?
Exactly. She said, well, it was
Car
like
theft,
go-karting. But it's really not like go-karting. It's really not.
And when you hit something, it does actually damage the car. You can't just start again. Anyway, coming up, we've got more. We've got a drag queen. We've got the leader of the Labour Party, believe it or not, and a Tory MP as well. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're already well into the show, and I've got the next one, and I'm going to go straight to it because it is the one and only Sir Keir Softy, or is it Sir Keir Flaky? This week he was called both names by Rishi Sunak, and of course he's still very much in the glow, basking as he was from last week's local election results, which proved that he could indeed win enough seats to make a government, but not enough to actually have a majority. So he's not doing that well. But the main reason I've nominated him this week is because instead of kind of capitalising on, winning quite a big result on Thursday of last week, and instead of sort of kicking the Tories and saying, you guys don't know what you're doing, he came out and suddenly said, oh, the public don't care about woke. They don't care about, culture wars. They don't care about issues like, what's a woman and, whether we should have 72 genders. And he's completely wrong. And there's been this huge backlash against what he said. And he's now put himself on the back foot yet again by declaring that ordinary people only care about the NHS and only care about the cost of living. Well, one of the reasons the cost of living is so high is because of the woke policies of our energy companies. And one of the reasons the NHS is in shtuck is because of the woke policies and all the diversity managers they've got and the net zero coordinators. And instead of having doctors, they've got loads of wokery telling them not to bother fixing anybody up because, there might be something wrong with them. I mean, I think peak wokery of the NHS was when, during COVID, somebody sent me a picture from their local GP surgery and it said, please do not enter here if you're ill. And you go, well, surely that's what you're for, isn't it? It was just ridiculous. So, I mean, Starmer then, this week again, 7 times he was asked whether or not he would have a pact with the Lib Dems, which he previously denied he would ever do. And he refused to answer 7 times. Yeah. So, I mean, the guy clearly is still as unpopular as he was when this happened.
That man is not allowed in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go on. Calm yourself down. Get out of my pub. Calm down.
There he is with his mask on. You'll like that's just for you, that one, Alan. And that was, of course, in the last sort of proper national election campaign when he went to the pub in Bath. He got thrown out because the guy hated him. Very funny.
And the publican was pinned down by a security guard in his own premises.
In his own pub.
I find that offensive.
Yeah. I mean, his name was Rod Humphreys, and I think it was a pub that I used to drink in when I was a student called the Raven. I've probably been kicked out of it as well, but for different reasons, obviously. But I mean, Keir Starmer just can't seem to get it right, can he?
But it's fascinating when you look at Keir Starmer compared to Rishi Sunak, because whilst their parties are equidistant in the popularity stakes, their personalities, their personal popularities is the other way around. And I think people forget that actually Sunak is quite a turn on and Starmer is quite a turn off for most voters. They just think that he's, and it sounds awful, but one of the things when people are asked, it's his voice that puts, which is a very shallow, it's like complaining about the way somebody looks. It's kind of mean, but his voice is something that really puts people off.
It's the content. I mean, you can cope with his bland voice if he actually said anything as well. I find it almost impossible to get through one of his speeches. Yeah. I can't. And
also, do you know, Julia Hartley-Brewer says this, that you listen to his speech and you can't remember any of it. No, literally a second after.
Well, also, the reason I think they're similar is because they're both technocrats. Yeah. And whilst they have this policy idea of going for a Hertfordshire woman, they're not quite sure. He obviously has embarrassed himself for not being able to say what woman is. And it's patronising that he and the Labour Party are completely disattached, unattached from ordinary people. That's been their leitmotif. This is what this whole thing is. It's a few cultural elites sort of saying, this is what's right, you lot, the great unwashed, you don't know what's right. But what's been so great, to carry on from your point earlier, Mike, is that the public, when they get these issues and they get a chance to say something about them, they're completely opposed to them. We need a dose of common sense, which is generally where the public's coming. Unfortunately, not from our technocratic class.
No, that's the thing. And also, they keep banging on about, Rishi Sunak being really, really wealthy. And again, I don't think people care about that. There might be some, on the left of, Jeremy Corbyn who think it's all disgraceful that all of these people avoid all this tax. But at the end of the day, I think people expect Rishi Sunak to be reasonably well off. And the thing that Keir Starmer's got a problem with is that he's not exactly, poor, is he?
He had an Act of Parliament.
He's got his own pension law.
Dedicated to him because of his pension.
Right.
I mean, how many people have that rarefied gift?
He's the only one.
He's
quite got a law made in his own name.
I know.
It's extraordinary.
And money to go with it.
Yeah, exactly right. So, back to Laura for your second one.
My second nomination this week is the US Navy.
Yes.
So the US Navy is facing a real problem with recruitment. And their astonishing approach to this is that they have made one of their sailors, who's a drag artist, a digital ambassador. And he produced a few recruitment videos for them last year.
Why do they think that's going to help
he's in
them?
drag. Well, that's the thing, you see. I think they're trying to appeal to the kind of people that are never going to join the Navy. But at the same time, I think they're probably turning off the kind of people who might, want to defend their country and
there's nothing to say you can't
enemy.
defend your country in high heels and a satin dress. Maybe you can, I don't know. But I imagine it's a bit difficult.
Of course not. But the thing is, the Navy thinks its problem is that it doesn't look inclusive enough. And that's not... In fact, in research, that doesn't come up as one of the top 5 problems at all. That's not why people are not going into the US Navy, because it's not inclusive enough. In fact, if anything, I'd say this video is going to turn people off because they're worried that when they get there, it's going to be all drag shows and pronoun education. And, the enemy's probably laughing at this. Can you imagine what Russia thinks?
Well, Putin,
watching these
I think,
videos?
has said, hasn't he, that this is why the West is in the sort of, complete denial of its collapse, because these are the kind of things that they put out. Let's have a look. I mean...
So, nobody cares. Nobody cares whether, what somebody's sexuality is or their gender identity or how they dress.
You also can't walk around a warship dressed like that because you'll fall through, the heels will go through the gratings. The gratings, won't they?
It's just not, it just shouldn't be a Navy recruitment video. Do you know what worked really well for the Navy? Top Gun, the film Top Gun did wonders for recruitment. And I bet you Top Gun Maverick, which was an amazing film and not at all woke, actually.
No.
But I think that these ads featuring a drag artist are, they're
But it's almost like they're forcing it on people when they don't need to. Most people don't care. I don't care about drag artists. I really don't give a monkeys if they want to be who they are, but I don't particularly want them teaching sex education to my children in primary school. I don't really want them advertising the military.
I think there is a real fear, though, that a woke military is a weak military. It's almost like the US military is doing propaganda for the other side.
Go weak.
Enemy states won't be looking at that and quaking in their boots, will they? That doesn't really represent US might and power.
They'll be quaking in their Louboutin.
But this is a crisis more broadly. It is in the military, but it's in all our institutions. The ideas of heroism, of valour, of virtue, of strength, all of those things have been emptied out of meaning. And we're also presented as being victims all the time or at risk of things. And so if we're all vulnerable, at risk, and things like the values of heroism or, fighting for something you believe in and being prepared to die for are emptied out of meaning and evacuated, that's enormously problematic. That's a huge issue.
It really is.
I just think that, again, people have got a bit too excited about this. This guy was one of, this drag artist was one of 5 digital ambassadors. It wasn't like a national advertising campaign where they were going to be put on the side of buses and on TV adverts. It was an online digital thing. They were one of 5. Also, this chap has been heavily promoted, won lots of awards. He's really, they is a really, really good sailor who's done a very, very good job. And then in the evenings, puts on shows when he's on the ships. He's one of the most popular members, of that particular ship's young naval officers because he puts on these amazing shows and all the sailors love it. And I was reading about them and thinking, actually, that is somebody who the Navy could be could be proud of and could reach parts other
Yeah, but I don't
advertising
know.
campaigns.
I prefer the old, not 9 o'clock news fake advert for the army when they said they had some guy holding a gun saying, I joined the army 4 years ago because I wanted to go to lots of foreign places I'd never heard of and kill people.
Yeah.
And I think
nice people and kill them.
Yeah, meet nice people and kill them. That was it. I mean, that's kind of why you join the armed forces, isn't it? Not because you want to dress up.
I've got 2 sons. One really wants to join the army, but he wants to join the army actually despite the kind of advertising that we even get in the UK, which is a bit woke, and he finds it off-putting. So, I mean, I get your point. This he's obviously a great sailor. I'm sure he's a great member of the Navy.
He's come from a military family. Father was a
However,
highly decorated
will it
naval
improve
officer.
Recruitment? I'm going to just put a punt out and say it won't. Just like Dylan Mulvaney didn't sell more cans of Bud Light. You've got to know your audience. The audience for the US Navy is not a horde of drag queens.
Why don't they just play in the Navy by the British people?
It's guys who want to be in the Navy, who aren't, well, I don't know, maybe they do all want to dress up in drag.
Well, maybe they always used to anyway, but listen, we've got to move on. Alan, give us your next one.
So my next plank of the week is Theresa Villiers.
Okay.
And also, I must say, I'll generalise it to the Conservative Party at the moment because she has made a statement saying that Rishi Sunak now should lay the foundation for the challenge against Labour, having been completely smashed in the local elections, losing over 1,000 councillor seats, on the basis that they say we should scrap housing goals and local housing targets. So the idea is that we have a NIMBYism now at the heart.
Oh, so we shouldn't build any houses at all?
And we've already got a really lacklustre, sluggish house building approach.
Right.
If we want to get on top of growth, productivity, houses for young people, job creation, and a range of areas like that, surely a political party that allegedly was for people being in business and owning their own houses, you now need more than 8 times your income. You used to be 4 times your income. Fortunately, we've seen a couple of good things happen with a couple of mortgage companies saying they're going to do 100% mortgages. But we have a huge issue with house building and a lack of infrastructure. We need 10 million new homes here. In Europe, many of the nations have actually increased year on year, between 400,000 and 500,000 houses. And this just demonstrates, along with, ironically, Michael Gove and the Airbnb moment saying, well, if you've got a second home, which is about the only thing that you can think of to invest in your older age that might be productive now, rather than having homes to live in, it becomes an investment. They've got it all wrong and they need a real radical kick, in my opinion, to resolve this. So she should get the plank.
A lot of places in London, actually, the house prices are falling quite heavily because people can't sell their homes because they got so expensive that they're now being corrected to a tune of about 10 and 20%. Certainly where I live in sort of, mid to east London, people can't sell their places for the money they put them up for last year.
Well, we'll see where it goes. But from Eden onwards, there was an aspiration of house ownership and the attempt to own your own property as a part of being engaged in society. I absolutely agree with we should scrap so much of the planning legislation. It's the opposite of what's happening at the moment, the red tape, the bureaucracy. But actually about 90% of Britain is not utilised. And there's this morbid NIMBYism of the green belt and this idea that somehow we'll just create this terrible world of pollution and night. We have to go up, we have to have density, but also outwards as well. We can explore with coastal regions and communities, with infrastructure. We should almost have a Festival of Britain, a kind of what the future looks like with innovation. Have people engaged in house building. Control of borders is an important discussion, but I wouldn't want to kind of say, the thing is that we have the ability to create density and scale. We have a bit of an oligopoly, only a few housing developers.
Well, I'm going to have to cut you short because we're running out of time. But you can't just build houses anywhere you want because people want to live where the work is. And it's not everywhere, unfortunately. That's the other problem. But anyway, coming up next, we're going to be going back to the Coronation for the concert because apparently that wasn't great. And also, there is a small matter of a member of the royal family. This is the Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're more than halfway through now and there's been some pretty good nominees already. I can't say I'm sure yet who's going to be in the frame, but coming up, we've got 2 more nominations in this section. First, from Daisy McAndrew. Daisy, what do you got?
Now, I know that I am being follically obsessed today because my first nomination was about beards and my second nomination is also about facial hair.
Yes.
But this was when I was watching the Coronation concert. Did you guys watch it?
I actually missed it because I had a
watched it
little
on
party
repeat.
in my little square where I live.
Very
and
good.
so by the time the concert started, I was a bit squiffy, to be honest.
You were
Couldn't be
patriotically
bothered.
squiffy.
I was.
Yeah.
Although I had been drinking rum made in Puerto Rico. Never mind.
Yeah. No, well, it should have been English sparkling
Should have
wine,
been, yeah,
obviously.
obviously.
The King would have said. But at the grand finale was the 3 remaining members of Take That.
Yes.
And, I mean, I just looked at them and thought, what do they look like? I mean, they sounded awful, they looked awful, but the worst of them was Mark Owen, who used to be the really cute one.
Yeah.
And, I mean...
Well, I heard Kevin O'Sullivan say on the talk with you that time has not been kind to them.
I'm afraid time really hasn't been kind to them. And he's got this...
Is that how he looks now?
Awful hair. No, his hair is much longer and looks
Right.
greasier than that. But he's got that really
Right.
dodgy tash that makes him look like somebody you wouldn't want to leave your...
Can you relive how bad the singing was? Let's have a look.
You're such a big star to me. You're everything I want to be. But you're stuck in a hole, and I want you to get out.
I tell you what, I mean, that's actually one of the Take That songs that I know, and I don't think it's that awful. But he's absolutely ruined it there.
Ruined it, and he had these funny little Cuban heels
Yeah.
on. And I mean, I hope that I'm not speaking out of turn, but Laura and I think are the same age, and I think we're the same age as Mark Owen. And for God's sake, come on.
Well,
I mean,
surely
please,
this
now is the opportunity to compliment us and tell us
No,
that
you're-
we don't
you're
look
looking
the same
fantastic,
age.
you are.
I thought he was 50. It was actually a bit of a whiplash of shock. I thought, hang on.
Well, he's in a
We're
boy
the same
band. You
age.
can't
That
be in a
means-
boy band at 50, can you?
means I
And I
must-
will take the
I
opportunity to
must
say you
be
both
as
look
old as-
fabulous. And
There we go, thank you very
that's
much.
why you're here. Nothing to do with your brain power at all.
Well, I thought I'm as old as him, but do I look as
Look
old
a lot better than him.
as he looks? You know, it was kind of a shocking moment.
You could probably
I have to
sing
say.
better than him as well at this point, because I mean, he seems to have adopted
don't
singing in a
know.
Manchester accent,
Although
which he never used to do.
There were some people that said at least they are admitting that they're growing older. They're not having all the nips and tucks. And then somebody said to me, at least it wasn't like Lionel Richie, whose cheekbones are now higher than his eyes.
Yes. But Lionel Richie's significantly older than 50, though, isn't he?
But he's
73.
old,
He's
yeah.
had
73.
surgery or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's something going on.
Also, he's American, so it's allowed. You know, I mean, you expect old American stars to have
But
surgery.
it did make me sad that the big stars didn't turn up for the concert because the production of the concert was incredible. The drones and the lights
I'm told
and the
that
whiz band was
production
amazing.
terrific.
It was.
But it was a kind of an
properly
odd collection of people. Wasn't
Katy
it?
Perry was good, I thought.
Was she?
Yeah, I
was
thought
all
she was
right.
good. Yeah. She's easy on
But
the
why
eye.
was she
Ollie
there?
Murs was okay.
But why was Katy Perry even there?
Well, I don't know.
Well, doesn't it also? There is a question here, isn't there? Which is great that people want to come out and celebrate and everything. But what is an institution? And I think that the institution of the royal family has a problem as well. And when it wants to keep being relevant and contemporary, how do you uphold an idea of tradition and those values? We know even that the
Well,
church...
not to take that, I don't
Well,
think.
exactly. We know that the Church of England and others changed their rules in the past. And I do think that this is one of the questions, that the more an organised institution tries to appeal to the mores of the contemporary landscape, a bit like having your old uncle at the party saying, this is how we used to do it, and actually going, well, that's not really that cool. Actually, the great thing in the past, when I was younger and growing up, when I loved pop music, is my teacher said, yeah, that's okay, but you come here to the Royal Festival Hall and we'll show you what great music is, and we'll show you Beethoven and Bach, and there's a reason why that's fantastic. And they showed a kind of sense of what it meant, high art. And I'm a lover of contemporary art and music, right? But there's that thing.
You wouldn't get them tapping their feet to Beethoven, though, in Windsor Park, would you?
But I
heaven's
take
sake,
your
it's the worst
point.
idea you've had all show.
There is something cringe about, fuddy-duddies getting down with the kids. Isn't there? It just
There is
it
that,
often
yeah.
doesn't
It's
work.
awful. It's awful.
I mean, they should have had like Status Quo or Madness or something like that, some kind of party type band. I know some of them are dead, but you could have put together some kind of royal super group, couldn't you? Or the Kings of Leon or something.
You've got to know your audience, but perhaps they knew that it was 50-year-olds tuning in, and that's why they wanted to take that on.
Yeah, maybe.
They weren't really trying to be too cool with that.
But the tash and the hair and the Cuban heels.
It's got to go.
Yeah.
Ben, your final one?
Well, I'm afraid it's back to the coronation, and it's quite a serious one. Yeah, I know, surprise, surprise.
That's a fair enough.
It's quite a serious one, this. So, at the heart, the coronation is the transition of the guardianship. This is how I see it. Of the guardianship of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland from the Queen to her son, the King. It's all about Charles the King, not Charles the man.
Right.
And present at Westminster Abbey, amongst a number of other politicians who, in my opinion, shouldn't have been there, but one that really stands out for me was Michelle O'Neill, who represents a party that openly wishes to break the very kingdom that we were celebrating that day.
Yeah.
And remember, this is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and she openly wants to take Northern Ireland out of it. And so I still can't understand why she would have been invited. I understand she represents the nationalist community in Northern Ireland, but actually when she openly holds our establishment in contempt and the integrity of our country in contempt, she shouldn't be there. And remember, Sinn Fein don't take up their seats at Westminster. They don't deign to do that. So why should she have a seat in Westminster in Westminster Abbey?
You could make the same argument about the
SDLP and Alliance, and indeed Yusuf Hamza
and the Scott Nats.
And there are lots of people I would identify, but she is openly also refusing to denounce terrorism perpetrated against the United Kingdom. She will not denounce IRA terrorism. So for me, she's a kind of persona non grata. And coming back to your woke point and the complete collapse, I think, of political will in this country, we're so hijacked by a desire to be seen to be doing the right thing that we're prepared actually to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And in this instant, I think there had to be a line drawn. You can't have people in Westminster Abbey, including Yusuf Hamza, and do you want to jump in?
No, I was just going to say, Ben, is your... do you think that she shouldn't have been invited, or she should have been invited and refused to go? Who's at fault?
She shouldn't have been invited. Having been invited, she should have declined to go. It would have at least been consistent with them not taking up their seats in Westminster.
Well, Alex Salmond, actually at the time of the coronation, was running an independence rally in Glasgow, and he said that Hamza Yusuf shouldn't have gone. He said, and you realise Alex Salmond is a bit of a statesman, more so than the current leader of the SNP, because he would have made a political point of it and said, I'm not going.
Hamza Yusuf is clearly schizophrenic because he went and then he paid his allegiance to the king. I mean, it's like maybe he wants to hijack the king and take him back to Scotland and make him James VII or something.
Yeah.
This is not a free speech issue. This is the crowning of the king of the United Kingdom.
Who is not recognised by this.
And who is not recognised, who is openly held in contempt.
I mean, even the delegate from China actually recognises that the king is the king.
But I mean, there's a limit to how open you can be. Sorry.
But Michelle O'Neill's argument was that she should be representing all.
She did say that.
She doesn't.
But she doesn't, does she? So there's another political minefield for you. Anyway, coming up next, we're going to have the end of the show, which includes my final nomination and, of course, who's going to win it. I wonder who it could be. This is Plank of the Week. Each other madly. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We're nearly at the end. I tell you what, there's been some great nominees, a lot of them to do with the coronation, and I'm afraid my last one is also to do with the coronation because it is our old favourite Prince Harry, who gave up all that time in Montecito so he could come all the way here for about 2.5 nanoseconds, only to have his head obscured, of course, by Auntie Anne. I think we can have a look, can we not, at the fact that she blocked his view.
Duke of Kent, and there we can see the Duke of Sussex as well, just in the row behind. They all know what's gone into this ceremony today because it's been in the making for decades.
Now, you can't tell me that was not a deliberate act by Princess Anne, who we know has got quite a good sense of humour, and who is actually quite a popular member of the royal family.
It's too good. It just looked like a great big red bog brush on the top of her head. Didn't it?
It really did, and you sort of see him going like that to try and get around it.
And the cameraman sort of scanned up to make sure we got a full view of it.
Well, I suspect they actually, military with precision, they sort of went, right, here's the best way for you to hold your head so that he will never be seen. And I mean, you think about his, the whole trip, nobody knew when he was coming, nobody knew exactly how he was coming, where he was staying. We think he stayed at Frogmore Cottage, we're not sure. We thought he came on a private jet, turned out he came on a regular jet that got in on Friday morning. But a lot of people who make that Los Angeles-London trip a lot say it really does actually take it out of you. You're kind of a zombie. Yeah. And he was only in the Abbey for whatever it was, 2 hours, and then he was in Buckingham Palace for half an hour, and then he jumped back in a presumably a Range Rover and went back to the airport. I don't know why he bothered coming.
Oh, it's so sad though.
It is a bit sad.
It makes you really sad. And you know that hat, it's a very clever hat.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you saw it outside Westminster Abbey Fair, you think, gosh, that's a really unusual fashion choice. Gosh, isn't she quirky?
Yeah.
And then you see them inside and think, that's what the feather's about.
Because don't forget, they did at least 3
hats.
rehearsals for this, right? In the week leading up to, I mean, Daisy, you were probably watching all of them.
I was reporting it.
And you know, so they must have known where he was sitting. Surely.
I mean, the cynics are even saying, because what she was wearing Blues and Royals full military uniform, because she was then made by the King gold stick in waiting for the procession that went back from the Abbey to Buckingham Palace, which meant that she rode. And it's a lovely gesture because that officially means she was in charge of keeping her brother safe, which is kind of cute in a way, you know, militarily speaking. But it comes with this ludicrous tricolour type hat, which, as you were saying, was and of
course,
have been
to add to the ignominy, you know, he had to arrive with the only people that are still speaking to him, which is Andrew's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, and their respective husbands. And Andrew himself, you know, who looked absolutely ludicrous. I mean, I thought about making him plank of the week, but he just kind of gets rolled up in all of it, where he was wearing that ludicrous kind of, you know, overblown
garter robes.
Garter robes, which you wouldn't really think he would have the kind of cojones to do. And then he had to sit in the same row as Andrew. Yeah. You know. And so the whole thing, and then the next thing that happened, which I thought was a bit plankish, was that Dior put out a tweet saying that he was dressed in Dior. And I mean, he did look very elegant and his suit looked very nice, but I'm not really interested in knowing that it's Dior. And I assume that he either got it free or he was doing some kind of advert for them. Well, it's a bit tacky.
Product placement,
what were they
isn't
thinking? What were Dior thinking? Maybe that carries some cachet in the United States.
I'm not sure if it does.
Over here, no one's going to be thinking, oh, well, yes, my next suit will be Dior.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not going to cut it here, is it?
It is interesting as well with all of these discussions about both the family and the institution that there is a question that has come to mind a bit somewhat within all of this, with the row that the King now allegedly has had with the former Prime Minister about the royal prerogative and what that actually means for Britain, which is still in place, which if the King was minded, and we all hope that he's not, but that's the problem with hoping about things, to do something around, let's say, the environment or anything else, he could invoke something without when going around Commons and the Lords. So that is a question that's ongoing.
I'm not sure I believe that Boris Johnson story, by the way, but that's not the story. Ben, what do you make of Harry's appearance?
Well, I like Laura was saying, I find it desperately sad that a member of the family couldn't really be fully engaged with the family on that day. I know it was about Charles the King, as I said earlier.
But he's his dad.
It's his dad. And there was that fantastically poignant moment when William knelt in front of King Charles and kissed him on the cheek. And you could see there was a real fatherly-son bond. And every father, every parent knows this feeling. You know, you want that bond with your children. Yeah. And Harry's broken it. And Harry must be desperately sad. He didn't look happy once to me that day.
No. So now it's time for me to pick who is going to be the winner. And the thing is, at the end, I thought I might actually give it to Prince Harry, but I'm always being accused of giving it to myself, which I can't have because it's not a corrupt show. Some are, but not this one. So what I'm going to do instead is give it to you, Laura, again, for Joa Ando from the Bridgerton show because of her ridiculous statement about the white balcony and how terribly white it all was. So she gets the plank of the week. Well done, Joa Ando. Well done indeed. Thank you very much to Ben Habib. Thank you, of course, to Daisy McAndrew, to Alan Miller, to Laura Dodsworth. We'll be back next week. Now, it's time for Nadine Dorries, Friday Nights